Between Europe and Asia, economic dialogue, humanitarian missions, multi-vector operating and the search for compromises in the world arena. How else does Kazakhstan participate in the development of the modern world? For more details, watch the program Kazakhstan International Vectors. Today you will find out how much water on average do we need, which countries possess the largest water reserves, and how is water security ensured worldwide.
Source of life-giving moisture. According to statistics, water covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface, and its volume equals to about 1.5 billion cubic kilometers. However, only 3% of its total volume is made up of fresh water. Its vast part is conserved in the ice of the Arctic, Antarctica, Greenland, and other mountain glaciers. Over the last century, the level of water consumption in the world has doubled. According to the World Commission on Water, today every person needs from 20 to 50 liters daily for drinking, cooking, and other household needs. However, about 1 billion people in 28 countries of the world do not have access to such a vital resource. The scarcity of water leads to the spread of diseases, land degradation, milling of rivers and lakes, and the lack of moisture for agricultural needs. It is not uncommon for military political conflicts to arise on the basis of the struggle for water use. Based on this, ensuring water security today is not only a priority for preserving national security of countries, but also a means to survive in the modern world.
Merkan district, a Zhambal region of South Kazakhstan. Here is situated the Aspara River, which divides Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Waters of this mountain river are used by residents of both countries for irrigation of agricultural lands. Since the river is transboundary and its waters belong to both countries, there have been many disputes between Kazakh and Kyrgyz sides. Intervention of international organizations helped to resolve conflicts, and at the first Joint Basin Council, it was decided to install water measuring equipment on this river.
There is an agreement on water distribution between Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. The contract is interest-bearing. 62% of water volume goes to Kazakhstan and 38% goes to Kyrgyzstan. But how to calculate the interest if you do not know how much water flows in the river in principle? And the situation was such that there was nothing measuring how much water was in the river. So we've provided such a support, we've helped them to install this water measuring equipment, and in principle, starting from 2014, this water measuring equipment has been working, and now there is no longer this subject of conflict.
In fact, not only there is no conflict, but there is also a tangible benefit. For example, for the farm called Ravshan, Aspara is the only source of irrigation. Previously, about 80 liters of water was needed for irrigation of this territory of 3 hectares. Through the old pipes, the water ran for a long time and mostly has been lost into the soil during the process of watering. Now there are absolutely no losses. We just opened this thing here and now we do not need more than 5 liters. Can you imagine? We previously needed 80 liters of water for irrigation and now it is enough for us to take approximately 5 to 6 liters of water. And now there is no evaporation, no filtration. We just open the tap and this water is being fully supplied, almost without a loss. The water supply is regulated by a special valve. Foreign donors have allocated funds for its installation, as well as on the installation of main water pipeline. From here, irrigation pipes originate. Due to this bolt, we regulate the water supply to that farm, let's say, and to our farm. Here you see, with the help of this lever. Here is this lever and we need to turn it like this for obtaining water here and to the nearest farm right there. This system of drip irrigation farmers installed at their own expense. Due to the natural landslope, the water from the Aspara River goes here without any barriers. Hence, there is no need to install additional pumps and additionally waste electricity. Accurate calculations of engineers allow all the droppers in the irrigation tubes to open simultaneously. The plant itself possesses the so-called hemotropism. or the ability of its roots to sort of fill the land and climb to the place of the highest moisture, basically. And by this type of watering, we can also adjust the occurrence of the root system, at least partially, so that the plant could go down or up. There are also no problems with the water supply. After all, due to the fact that on the Aspara River special devices controls and registers water intake, Rafshan Farm as well as other nearby farms can be assured of the future. This ensures water security in this region. Let's say the water flows from the Aspara River in a certain amount and it is being distributed correctly. There are no disputes here. It's just, has relieved such a tension. And now everyone agrees that this work had to be done. The Central Asian region today covers an area of almost 4.5 million square kilometers. This is 10% of the entire territory of Asia. Water resources of the region are estimated at 170 cubic kilometers per year. They are formed by the rivers, lakes and glaciers. However, reserves of life-giving moisture are distributed unevenly. 66 million inhabitants of the region receive 90% of the water they consume from rivers of Amudarya and Sirdarya, head springs of which are situated in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Here also the main glacial reserves of water are concentrated. These countries do not have their strategic oil and gas deposits, unlike their downstream neighbors Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. And if earlier countries exchanged the necessary natural resources on the basis of barter, today the situation is different. In Soviet times, everything was centralized. The funding was centralized. There was one country, common borders, so the issue of water and energy and other resources related to water were not so acute. But when the countries became independent, of course, they began to create their own economies, develop their national economies, and of course they have put their interests at the center of the corner. In this regard, these interests sometimes do not coincide. Agriculture is the main uneconomical water consumer in the region. The sharply continental, sometimes droughty climate forces agricultural producers to irrigate much of the sown areas. Speaking of energy, some Central Asian countries in this sense depend heavily on the operation of hydroelectric power stations.
In Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, the share of hydroelectric power in the total volume of electricity generation equals to 75–90%. In Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, this figure does not exceed 15%.
Thus, as for many other regions, for Central Asia, water supply and water management is a complex issue with political, economic and social aspects. And to solve it, world experts offer countries to cooperate with each other. I'll give you one example. The World Bank's calculations show that if countries separately carry out their work on water management, they will lose a total of about 4% of the annual gross regional income. If we agree, together we can win about $20 billion for 5 years. This is a huge sum for Central Asia. Therefore, experts from the Regional Environmental Center for Central Asia suggest not to divide water, but to share the benefits of using this water. This approach implies, first of all, the introduction of integrated water resources management. And most importantly, what is needed for this is to sit down at the negotiating table. If we take a small river, where on both sides different countries are neighbors, they use this water together. We say, this country and this country, let's sit at the table and create a commission that will plan for 5, 10, 15 years how the water resources of this river will be used. Such a tool for long-term planning, according to experts, can be most effective when it comes to water disputes.
This approach, it has already been tested and implemented at river basin levels. That is, it is a very local level that covers a small river basin. But in the process of managing this river, water managers, of course businesses, members of different organizations, sanitary and epidemiological services and the economy representatives participate. That is, all representatives of these sectors, which are represented at the local level, they are equally participating, jointly, coordinately participate in the management of this basin.
It is very important that people involved in the process of water management in one country know their colleagues from a neighboring country and trust them. Such close cooperation can not only prevent the emergence of conflicts for water, but even avoid human casualties. An example of such coordinated cooperation is the Risen Sil, which crossed one of the transboundary rivers in Central Asia.
There was such a case in 2014. Along the Isfara River, a seal went down, and it started from the upper reaches from the Kyrgyz side and went down the river to the Tajik side. Upper reaches are situated in Kyrgyzstan and the downstream in Tajikistan. And because people knew each other, they just made a phone call. I mean, the rescuers from the Kyrgyz side phoned the rescuers from the Tajik side, and they said, "The seal goes, you will have it in an hour, remove the people from the river." And in fact, it allowed saving a lot of people and preventing serious damages.
Such work, according to the experts from Regional Environmental Center for Central Asia, is very fruitful, although time-consuming. The process of negotiations sometimes drags on for years, but it has a multiplicative effect and does not involve any financial losses.
Therefore, when we come to these facilities, for us the most important thing in the beginning is to get that part of trust, so that people trust us, that we do not come to impose our opinion on them, yes, but we come to show them how to cooperate. We want to show them the benefits of cooperation.
Not only international organizations and funds are engaged in ensuring water security in Central Asia. The issue is being resolved at the state level. For example, in Kazakhstan, legal and organizational conditions have been created for the transition to integrated management of natural resources. The country has ratified more than 24 international environmental documents. Kazakhstan adopted the state program for water resources management for 2015-2020, which is designed to solve tasks for the safe operation of hydroelectric facilities and ensure food security, improve the management of water bodies.
The system of agriculture, the energy system, water resources and of course ecosystems, ensuring security of that, all components need to be considered in an indissoluble relationship. And it is very important that at the country level, different ministries and departments take into account the interests of other sectors.
In his message, the president of Kazakhstan spoke about 10 challenges that in the nearest future await the country, the region and all mankind. One of these challenges is the reduction of water resources. Thanks to participation in such international organizations as the UN Security Council, the Republic has an additional opportunity to involve the world community in solving water issues. Naturally, efforts at the international level are needed to ensure water security, but the main burden for solving this problem lies on the states. And the state should answer this question responsibly and ensure, first of all, rational use and protection of water resources at home at the national level. Water security today means providing the population with sufficient water volumes for both production and domestic needs. According to the United Nations, the country does not experience a water deficit if it is able to provide each of its residents with at least 1,000 cubic meters of water annually. It's not a secret that the world's reserves of life-giving liquid today are significantly different from each other in different countries.
The richest country in the water reserves today is Brazil. Almost a third of its territory is occupied by the Amazon River basin, which includes the river itself and more than 200 of its tributaries. This giant system contains a fifth part of all river waters in the world. In second place goes Russia, with its more than 20% of the world's freshwater resources. It is followed by Canada, where 7% of the world's reserves of this resource are located. Here lives less than 1% of the total population of the Earth. Accordingly, the availability of water per capita here is one of the highest in the world.
But one thing is to have rich natural resources and quite another to use them rationally. Here international partners come to the aid of states. For example, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has recently launched a new internet application. Using satellite data, the WAPA system measures the key phase of the natural water cycle and provides data on the amount of water needed for a specific crop volume. The $10 million project covers countries in Africa and the Middle East and aims to ensure that water users receive more reliable and cost-effective water services, which are best adapted to the climate change.
Therefore, taking into account the interests of all sectors of the economy, in the interrelationship, in the mandatory consideration of the environmental factor will allow us to minimize those risks from not taking into account the interrelationships, those risks that we may face as a result of the expected climate changes.
In Egypt, a grandiose national project called New Valley is going to be completed. Construction has been going on for 5 years, and total cost of the project is estimated at about $70 billion. Despite serious financial costs, the prospects of the New Valley are very global. Under the project, 10% of the water from the Nile River will be redirected by the newly constructed station to the western regions of the country, and the area of habitable land in Egypt will increase by a quarter. This will create almost 3 million new working places, and more than 16 million people will be relocated to new projected cities. Water security is ensured when countries are distinguished by a high level of development, primarily economic development. In this case, we can say that national security and water security are ensured. An example can be the solution of transboundary problems, for example, in Europe. This is when the Danube River, which is being used by many countries. There, an effective system of monitoring and using the natural resources of this transboundary river has been created. The World Anti-Rating on Water Waste is headed by the countries of Central Asia. The leader in this matter is Turkmenistan. The water consumption here is about 5,500 cubic meters per year. This is 4 times more than, for example, in the US and 13 times more than in China. Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, consuming about 2,000 cubic meters of water per person, are also included in the top 5.
Scientists have calculated that the average person uses about 200 liters of water a day. In the US, this figure is 280 liters and in Germany, 140 liters. In megacities, water is consumed much more than in small towns and villages. For example, in Moscow, on average, one person consumes up to 400 liters of water daily.
In Kazakhstan, much attention is paid by the government to the issue of ensuring water security. At the national level, a number of documents and development strategies have been adopted. Their essence boils down to the fact that it is necessary to reduce the pressure on water resources and increase their reserves. International initiatives of the Republic were announced in 2015 at the conference Water for Life, which was held in Dushanbe. First, it is to organize and hold a water summit, the World Water Summit, dedicated to the problems of water resources and, first of all, the problem of water resources in the Aral Sea Basin. Second, to organize a Central Asian Investment Fund to implement water projects and to organize a regional water security center. And third, to sign the Pact of Water and Environmental Safety in Central Asia, thereby coordinating the actions of all 5 Central Asian states to address the most priority issues related to water resources. These dwarf trees in the farm Rav Shan were planted in 2016. Apples, peaches and plums will grow here. The first harvest will be collected next year. In the peak season, it is planned to get up to 80 tons of fruits per hectare and at the usual time 50 to 60 tons. Look, here's a 1-year-old tree on a dwarfish rootstock, grown from winter grafts. This year you see there is already an ovary. The tree blossomed and there is an ovary here, and here it is. So next year this tree will be harvesting. The harvested crop will go both for export and for covering the needs of the local population. Thus, thanks to the timely assistance of the Regional Environmental Center for Central Asia and other international partners in the elimination of water conflicts, it will be possible to partially ensure the food security of the region. Each of us can contribute to the solution of the problem of water security, experts say. To do this, you just need to change your attitude to the use of water. Stop thinking about yourself today and think about your tomorrow.
When you are resting somewhere near the river, for example, and if you do not litter, an elementary example, then your garbage will not flow downstream to your neighbor. The same if you close the tap, then you reduce the amount of used, dirty water, that is, you keep a larger amount of clean water. That is, these are everyday things that allow each of us to make this contribution.
International experts agree it is impossible to consider water security outside the context of food, energy and environmental security. Such a concept has already been reflected in the UN Millennium Development Goals. The same principle is followed by Kazakhstan in its concept on the transition to the green economy. And thanks to the election to the non-permanent members of the UN Security Council, the country showed its readiness to contribute to the achievement of global energy, environmental and water security.